Aiming to ease public fears after panic buying left fuel pumps dry across major cities, British Prime Minister Boris Johnson says the situation has started to improve and is stabilising. The UK Prime Minister also says the government is making preparations to ensure supply chains are ready for the run-up to Christmas. He's urging motorists to fill up their cars in the normal way.
I want to say, first of all, how much I sympathise with people who've been worried about their journeys, worried about whether they'll be able to use their cars in the normal way to see their loved ones or whatever it is. And I know how frustrating and infuriating it must have been to worry about a shortage of petrol or fuel. We now are starting to see the situation improve. We're hearing from industry that supplies are coming back onto the forecourts in the normal way. And I would just really urge everybody to just go about their business in the normal way and fill up in the normal way when you really need it, and you know, things will start to improve. What we want to do is make sure that we have all the preparations necessary to get through till Christmas and beyond, not just in the supplying the petrol stations, but all parts of our supply chain.
Boris Johnson is ruling out, though, priority access at petrol pumps for key workers. This was the first statement by the UK Prime Minister since the fuel supply problems began. On Wednesday, Transport Minister Grant Shapps said that Brexit was one of the factors that played a role in the fuel crisis. Opposition leader Keir Starmer has lashed out at Boris Johnson and accused him and the government of lurching from one crisis into another. Despite the Prime Minister's attempted reassurance, lengthy queues have continued to be seen outside gas stations across London. Some forecourts still have signs up warning that no fuel is available. One of the key issues in a shortage of lorry drivers was a halt to the truck driving licence testing during the pandemic. But the haulage industry says that's been compounded by thousands of European drivers leaving the UK after Brexit. Supply chains had already been creaking before the petrol crisis of this week, and it's raised the spectre of widespread shortages and price increases ahead of Christmas. The UK government is bringing in measures such as issuing temporary visas to 5,000 foreign drivers, but the British Retail Consortium is urging the government to broaden the size and scope of its temporary visa scheme. The Petrol Retailers Association says there are early signs the pressure on petrol stations is beginning to ease.
What we've got is a global economy that is recovering from what has been a once-in-a-century pandemic. And that has caused some particular shortages. I've mentioned a couple: HGV drivers and gas. And those shortages are a function of huge global demand. But we're meeting them. And what we have is all sorts of plans in place to make sure that as we go forward into the new year, that we have everything necessary to protect our supply chains and keep things moving. But as I said, what we're seeing now and what we're hearing now from industry is that the situation on the forecourts in our petrol stations is stabilising.
Despite that, Britain's business minister says soldiers are ready to start driving tankers to replenish empty pumps as the fuel shortages continue in places. Soldiers have been mobilised already and may be seen driving tankers within a few days.
It takes one versed in military defence issues knows that it takes a couple of days, sometimes a few days, to get troops on the ground. We've decided to do that, and I think in the next couple of days people will see some soldiers driving the tanker fleet. I'm not guaranteeing anything. All I'm saying is that I think the situation is stabilising. I think people realise that this will pass, and we're very, very focused on making sure that we get enough drivers. We've stood up military drivers, and we want to just make sure that we get enough petrol into the forecourts that can actually mean that we have enough supply for demand. And it looks like, when we look at the figures yesterday, it looks like the situation is stabilising, the inflow of petrol. matches the sales.
Well, for more on this, we can cross live now to WION's London Bureau Chief Mandy Clark. Mandy, the opposition Labour leader Keir Starmer is on his feet right now at his party's conference in Brighton, and he's made the fuel crisis a major focus.
Well, you know, Keir Starmer had earlier said that really this issue was flagged in the spring, that this would be an issue, the supply chains, and he's accused Boris Johnson of doing nothing to prevent this crisis that is happening now. It's not like they didn't know, according to Keir Starmer, that there would be a shortage of HGV drivers, and compounded with the pandemic, it has led to this crisis. I'm currently at Broccoli. There is no fuel at this station, but this was made famous by all the papers because it's one of the first punch-ups about the fuel crisis. So even though there are some forecourts that are stabilizing, there's still many that are simply without fuel.
OK, Mandy, thank you.